listening to episode 259 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Brian Hoyer of Shielded Healing. Brian is a pioneer in the EMF mitigation space. He was trained at the Klinghardt Academt, and he became a certified geobiologist trained by a pioneering naturopathic and environmental medicine clinic in Austria. Brian and his team travel all over the country doing EMF assessments and helping people to upgrade their environment in their home. And as I mentioned, he's a pioneer, so he's constantly looking to improve the products and methods that have been used for the last 3 decades in the EMF mitigation realm. So in this interview, Brian describes the different types of man-made EMFs. We talk about grounding technology and how to use it properly. He shares his thoughts on all of the EMF harmonizing energetic technologies that exist. And the main focus of the show, we spend quite a bit of time talking about EMF shielding, of which I have a lot of personal experience experimenting with that, and some not so good using EMF shielded clothing. And he shares why he really doesn't like that silver embedded EMF blocking clothing and thinks it's actually causing harm. He shares his top tips if you're staying in a hotel. And then I ask him listener questions, including what are his thoughts on the Tesla Powerwall system, what to do if you live in a condo, how do you mitigate the harmful effects of an electric meter or smart meter outside the bedroom, are Teslas higher in EMFs than regular gas vehicles, does he recommend EMF blocking paint for interior walls, does he advise having hardwired internet, his thoughts on Starlink, are laptop EMF shields effective, is sleeping near non-occupied outlets bad, activity tracker recommendations, and a whole lot more. So enjoy the show. Here is Brian Hoyer. All right, Brian Hoyer, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, we're right down the street from each other, but I was just telling you I don't have the mobile setup to record done yet, but we've known each other for several years and had a couple sit-down chats, and you're just so knowledgeable about this topic. I'm really excited to share you with my audience and just talk about EMFs, and it's such a big topic, right?
It is. It's a huge topic. It's a controversial topic, and it's also a hot topic with lots of people like on the cursory, on the perimeter, looking at it, being like, how can I make money off of this thing? Like, and a lot of it's fear mongering, a lot of it's impractical solutions that are out there. And then there's some solutions out there that just simply, it's a big waste of money. It doesn't work. So, I kind of have this philosophy that the body should be able to heal itself. And EMF is definitely one of those pernicious modern stressors that we have that our ancestors did not have. And if you approach things like you do with your audience from a more ancestral perspective, then I think it kind of opens up people's eyes to like, what are the actual solutions? And we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah. I love that you focus a lot on the measuring side, because that's where I started years ago with lessemf.com, that website. And I think my first meter was that tri-field meter, the not digital, just the little
analog like needle that goes back and forth. I had one of those when I started out too. Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people start, right, with that thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you had the old needle one, then you're like an old dinosaur. Like you were learning about EMF before like 99.999% of people in the world.
Right. And it was kind of a useful device. I mean, I remember going around my ex-girlfriend's apartment at the time and going up to the fridge, going up to the microwave, just going all over measuring. And because it was an apartment, it was just off the charts high everywhere you went in there. But that, even that alone, just hearing the noise, seeing it maxing out, kind of started me looking into all this stuff. And I like that you mentioned the solutions that are shared in the health community, because you go to these health conferences and there's so many booths with, quantum cubes and subscription models that'll beam your house with quantum energy. And there's all sorts of, stuff that people wouldn't even dream of as solutions. There's entire companies and businesses built around it. It's incredible. And are they effective? A lot of these you can't measure with these meters, right? So,
Right. Yeah. It's even debatable. Like there's no evidence whatsoever that that what they're doing, whatever they're doing, has anything to do with man-made EMF that is measurable. So like the fact that they just like lock onto that because it's a hot topic, I think it's more of a marketing thing than it is like actually doing anything to mitigate that problem. It's like picking a random problem, like, okay, mold is a problem in people's home. Let's say we can create some quantum energy device that helps their body deal with mold and detox mold. So they don't have to like get rid of the mold. They can just live in a really moldy environment. And then we're going to send them this quantum energy that helps their body deal with mold. Like, how believable is that to the average person? And it's just because EMF is something that's invisible, it's inaudible, you can't hear it, that they get away with it, in my opinion.
mm-hmm. Well, before we go into like all the options for solutions, let's start with what EMFs are. And there's multiple different types, right? Like when I had the tri-field meter, you can switch the little knob to RF or magnetic or electric. Those are like the main ones, right? And then there's dirty electricity. And
yeah, so when we talk about EMF, we're talking about mainly the man-made, non-native to this planet types of EMF that are man-made. And so we're talking about mainly pulsed electricity, which is modulated and pulsed by man-made equipment, whether it's a transmitter, whether it's the electrical transmission lines, and those can those show up as certain frequencies that are labeled in either electric fields, magnetic fields, or wireless radiation typically. And then there's dirty electricity that's between like the electric and magnetic and the wireless frequencies that kind of have some of the characteristics of both. They can be on the electrical lines, but they can also permeate out from the electrical lines and act sort of like a wireless frequency in some ways. And so the thing about all of these frequencies that are man-made is that each one has a different solution. You can't just do one thing that will get rid of everything, because that's not how physics works. So like grounding technology helps to reroute electricity and voltage to, basically we're using it as a way to reroute it to a location that's away from the body. But grounding can also be a therapy, and that's a whole separate thing, because you get grounding DC therapy, and that's a separate thing from the AC electricity that is actually mitigated and rerouted to the ground. So a lot of building biologists and so-called experts that are out there will take a multimeter, measure your body voltage, and show you that on a grounding mat, your body voltage goes down. But that's not the whole point of grounding mat. It's to get the earth energy and to measure that DC energy that's coming up to your body and giving you those negative ions. And that's all the benefits, all the studies on grounding have to do with that phenomena of getting that the negative ions from the earth and having your feet electrically connected to the earth. And that's a separate phenomenon from what happens when you actually are grounding with electricity around, because there's a secondary thing that's happening when your body has this low voltage potential. All that pulsating electricity is looking for the lowest voltage and the shortest path to ground. And so there's a secondary phenomenon going on when you're using grounding technology that is making your body basically part of that circuit that's the pathway to ground for the AC fields, in addition to the DC energy you're getting from just being in contact with that grounding mat. So and then wireless frequencies, they're actually shielded by shielding materials that are metallic materials, whether it's graphite and carbon and shielding paints that are very common, or you can get a canopy that's lined with silver. There's, basically anything metal can block or reflect away those wireless frequencies. And it doesn't have to be grounded in order to do that. So just the nature of all these different frequencies are such that there's a different solution for each one. And so that's kind of a gauge that people can use to like, is the EMF solution you're looking at, does it claim to fix everything in one go? And if so, it's not really based on physics and science. It's actually just probably a load of garbage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I often tell people too, like if they have money to spend and they want to experiment, like go for it. I really encourage that. But I always emphasize use the dirty electricity filters if that's right for your home in the situation, unplug the Wi-Fi router, do all the basic stuff first before experimenting with these gadgets and toys, because would you say that some of them, like scalar things, could be efficacious, but we just can't measure it, but it shouldn't be like our only or primary route of defense from this problem?
What I would say is you treat those devices on their own merits without bringing EMF into the picture, because there's absolutely no evidence that EMF has anything to do with the way any of these quantum or scalar devices work, because there's no scalar meter. You can't measure scalar frequency. It's a theoretical frequency that they say the device is producing, but they have no way to measure it, no way to calibrate it. And they just basically say it's producing it because they theorize that it's producing that energy. And they see some results based on testing that they had done, whether that's legitimate, a study or not. And so the way I view it is like, if you're using devices that don't see measurable reduction in EMF radiation, don't consider it as part of the EMF solution. Consider it as an adjunct therapy, like an energetic therapy, kind of like PEMF or red light. Those are types of EMF that we know are efficacious and have certain biological reactions on the body, but we can actually measure those things and we see the physiological results, and they're even FDA approved, whatever, like that matters today, but they are. And so even Western medicine considers them as legitimate types of therapies that have a biological effect on the human body. And light is a type of EMF. So photobiomodulation is a type of electromagnetic therapy. And then, of course, pulsed electromagnetic frequencies and fields are a type of electromagnetic therapy as well. But as far as these other devices, they need to have, just like photobiomodulation and PEMF, they need to be considered on their own merit. It's totally separate from EMF, because photobiomodulation devices, they actually help the body to mitigate a lot of the damaging effects that EMFs have on the body. It supports the mitochondrial function. It gives your body this subcellular melatonin, and that dampens like EMF damage on a cellular level and even on the mitochondrial level. So you could say that red light therapy, near infrared light therapy, is protecting you from EMF. That would, to me, like that would be more true than a lot of what these other devices claim and therapies.
You brought up a lot of things earlier, like shielding canopies and grounding. I'd like to delve into those for a second. I wanted to start with the tent. So I think it was last year we were at a conference and we were super high up. I can't remember what floor, something crazy, like the 30th or 40th floor at the hotel. And I'd brought basically a bed canopy out of silver to experiment with. And it actually had the one that went under the mattress. So we went to the trouble of lifting the mattress, putting it under. It draped over that. And I made sure that it was pretty tight. I mean, I tucked it in, and I still got bars on my cell phone. I don't think I brought an RF meter, but I could still make texts and phone calls inside of that thing. So I don't remember the name of the company. Even if I did, I wouldn't call them out. But what would you say to that? Like, why it wasn't effective? Was it maybe the quality of silver? Could there have been a million?
It could be partially the quality, but we actually have that's a great question because that's what a lot of our customers will get like our solutions put in, and then they'll have like that's basically all they have. They have a phone or maybe even like a FM radio, and they're trying to test it. I actually just tested someone's house in Spokane last week, and they had built a canopy out of our organic cotton silver shielding fabric, and they had put a boombox radio in there, and they were getting like a radio station still. And so I went there to show them and test it with an RF meter. And basically what happens is like if you're in an area where there's a very high signal of a certain frequency, like for them it was a radio frequency, for you it sounds like there was a cell phone frequency that was like really strong. What happens is because of the frequency of that's being transmitted, sometimes it will actually resonate with the shielding material and rebroadcast a certain distance into the shielded space. And so unless you're right in the middle, a lot of times you'll get a reading, but the reduction of the primary frequency that's blasting and hitting the shielding material, it's reduced by like over 99%. And then in addition to that, if you have a phone, your phone, you have to remember, is also got a transmitter in it. So it's transmitting, trying to push through the shielding fabric, and actually sometimes you can detect it on the other side of the shielding fabric when your phone's going off. So that's connecting with the frequency that's outside of that shielding material. So when you're testing these things, it's really much better to have like an actual, just an antenna, just a receiver, which is what an RF meter is. It's a lot more accurate way to test, okay, what am I actually being exposed to when I'm in here? Because your phone, when it goes to it through a dead area, it starts to blast and pump out even more frequency so it can connect to the tower. And that's why, like, if you had your phone in that canopy for a while, it would drain the battery much quicker than it would outside of the canopy.
Mm-hmm. That was a great explanation. Yeah. And I did a much more costlier experiment by using that Y Shield paint, I think that you use. And I painted my float room, sensory deprivation flotation tank room in that, ceiling, floor, all the walls. And I normally don't get anxiety in the float tank. And I started to get extreme anxiety where I had to have the lights on or music on and I couldn't really relax in there. And I've never had that. I mean, I've floated for 2-3 hours before, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm getting ready to demo that room because I can't think of anything else besides I'm shielding the earth frequencies or something. I've asked a couple of guests that I've had on the show about that, and you're probably the best one to ask. Any theories on why that is, or
On why you would feel anxiety in that shielded room?
mm-hmm.
Well, unless I tested, I can't say for sure, but I could theorize on a few things that could be happening. Um, Sometimes it takes a little bit for people to relax after being in an area where there's like no EMF. That's one thing. For you, I don't think that was probably the case. Because the whole point of a float tank is to like have relaxation, and you get in there and your body's supposed to, like, all the muscles are supposed to relax and everything. So if the paint wasn't grounded properly, or there was some kind of voltage gradient where there was an electric field like in the actual float tank that wasn't shielded, you could be like amplifying the electric field inside of the float tank itself, because the water itself is conductive.
Especially with
So
all the salt. Yeah.
yeah, so it'd be really interesting. I don't know if you still have your float tank, but it would be something interesting to test, because you could actually test the water and see if there's any 60 hertz on it. And it might actually have been a good hack for you to just put a little copper wire in there that was grounded and actually ground the water. And that might have done more than even shielding the whole room. The whole room would have been shielded from wireless, but then you have the electric fields from the actual float tank to deal with. So grounding the conductive water probably would have been like a really interesting experiment.
Okay. Well, it's still up. So yeah, I'll do some more tests. It was grounded, but was it done properly? I hope so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
there's so many details with all this stuff, right?
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I love doing it is because I love solving puzzles, and we go into every person's house and it's like a new puzzle to figure out and then build a specific protocol for. And it reminds me a lot of like what I used to do when I was doing a lot more um, nutritional clients and things like that. Like as a nutritional therapy practitioner, is where I kind of test the whole body, palpate the organs, and build protocols with supplements for the person. And in doing that work, I started to look at houses and our environments in the same way. And so, like, the whole goal with the person's body is to balance their body out with the proper nutrients for their specific, bioindividuality. And every single home is bioindividual as well. There's always some different issue in each home that we go and we test. And so, like, my whole team of people that I've trained to go all over the country, we go into the home, spend 3 or 4 hours in each home, identifying like, okay, what are the magnetic fields? Are they high? If they're high, why are they high? And is there a wiring error? Is it coming from the cable line outside or the power lines outside, or some other issue inside with certain devices that people have plugged in that are too close to seating areas or sleeping areas? And then we're also testing the electric fields, the dirty electricity, the light. We test artificial light. That's one of the types of EMFs that we test for as well, that a lot of building biologists just completely ignore. And it has the most profound effect usually on people who are especially sensitive to EMF. And then obviously the wireless radiation. And then there's also this geopathic stress that comes up from the earth that we test for. And that can have a profound impact on people as well if you're sleeping right on a geopathically stressed zone.
So even if you're fully off grid, people could have issues, whether it's wiring or water underneath the property, right? It's all
Right.
sorts of stuff.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
pretty wild. What do you, so with artificial lights, are you a fan of like we have blue blocks here where you flip the light switch and it switches like three different wavelengths. Basically, it'll be like, noonday sun and then like early morning and late afternoon sun. And then it has like an amber kind of orangish glow we turn on at night.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm a big fan of their products. I know the owner, Daniel, really well. I actually helped him bring a few products that were needed to the American market, including their new BR30 bulb that has the three settings.
cool.
And so my new company, the Shielding Shop, we're trying to stock like all the best products from around the world on our website. And his is one of the lighting products that we recommend. The only caveat to that is I would say it's not like a great standalone product for good lighting, because outside we're getting near infrared and UV, obviously. So it's not like a full replacement. Like it says full spectrum on their marketing material, and it kind of technically is full spectrum in the visible spectrum, but in the invisible spectrum, it's not full spectrum. It's just the bare minimum that it won't do damage to you at certain times of the day. Like it won't disrupt your melatonin if you have it on the 1800 Kelvin setting, the orange glow setting, or the 2100 Kelvin setting is kind of nice. And then during the daytime, like in the morning until like maybe 1 or 2 p.m., you actually need that really bright blue light in order to build up your serotonin stores so that you have more melatonin that's created later in the day. So like there's all these people in the biohacking movement that have been so focused on blue light as bad for so long. But blue light actually we get blue light from the sun. It's just paired with near infrared and red together all day long from sunrise to sunset. And so that's the missing part, is we need the blue light when there is blue light outside, but we also need the red light and the infrared at the same time. So with these bulbs, you need to pair that with incandescent or halogen bulbs in order to imitate more closely what you're getting from the sun, because the red light actually helps to dampen the damage from blue light, because blue light alone, it will damage your retina, it will damage your skin. But when it's paired with red light, there's a repair mechanism that goes on simultaneously. And that's the way that any light is provided for us in nature, with blue and red together, whether it's sun or fire. Those are the two main sources, really.
I just thought randomly of the new Apple product. What is it? The Vision Pro. Do you think that's gonna cause a lot of issues in people? It's like the VR AR headset. I was talking to my older brother about it, and I was like, I wonder if it's going to cause issues, mainly just because you're focusing on something so close up. Like, say you're watching a movie with that for like 2 hours. And he was, I guess there's articles on that now, and he was reading that no, your eyes are kind of tricked to think that it's looking at like a projector, like almost like a movie screen far away. But I'm wondering if you looked into that at all yet, or is
I
we're not
haven't
out
looked into it, but just based on what you've described, I can already tell there's going to be all sorts of problems for people. Just the fact that they're not like thinking, oh wait, how can we optimize the health of the eye while we give them this experience? Like that's not a
yet.
question that's even on the table for them. You know, they're just trying to create something that's addictive and an experience. And in training, there's already been a lot of studies that have been buried over the years about like how you can actually like do mind control through flickering lights and different things. And all of that research was based on things that have informed the computer industry and the technology industry, including probably this product. So who knows what they're doing with it. I'm not one to like say they are doing it, but the research was the foundation of the development of this technology from the beginning. So if they're trying to make food in our food system more addictive by adding MSG and all this other crap, like really high amounts of fructose or different artificial sweeteners and things that are proven to be addictive, and caffeine in some ways, then of course they're going to be looking for ways to make other things addictive in other industries as well.
I have a suggestion for a new product for you. Low EMF noise canceling headphones, because I tried one from a brand, I can't remember the name, and it was marketed as such, and they didn't work as well as my Apple, Bluetooth AirPods Max. And these have saved me so many times screaming babies on planes where, I can stop a headache in its tracks, with the noise cancellation.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to like sacrifice your sanity for a little bit of EMF exposure. And those are the times when I think you shouldn't be like so stressed out. Oh my gosh, I have this EMF exposure because I'm using my phone, or I have to text somebody, or I have to use my Bluetooth headphones in this moment. But that's why we have like solutions like molecular hydrogen, like ascorbic acid, like vitamin E, any of these, we have all these tools that can help push our bodies towards fighting against the oxidative stress created by EMFs. And so that's one of the things I appreciate about you is you've really gotten in over the years to the biochemical processes and the antioxidant pathways and what actually is going on in the body. And because a lot of like we're under so much oxidative stress as a society and just living on this planet with all the modern stressors and toxins, that we have to be living a detox lifestyle, but also living a lifestyle in which we're reducing exposures where we can. And one of those big exposures and things that's coming out now is that something that you've been researching for a while is linoleic acid being like a huge contributor to electrohypersensitivity. Actually, there's a lot of lipid peroxidation, like oxidation, that's going on in people's bodies that's causing them to become more sensitive to frequencies, because those frequencies are also causing that problem to accelerate like massively. So like Dr. Mercola wrote an article about linoleic acid. I think it's in the Nutrients publication, but he goes over that and talks a little bit about EMF in that in some of his articles and things. And it's a huge deal. We don't really need very little linoleic acid in our diets, and our body is constantly being oxidized on that fat, on that lipid level, but also on the water soluble level as well. And that's why ascorbic acid and molecular hydrogen are so important. So really anyone who's got inflammatory issues or has problems with EMF sensitivity, they need to be thinking about their like fat soluble antioxidants like vitamin E, and astaxanthin is also a really good one. And then
Mhm.
and then they also need to be thinking about water soluble antioxidants like ascorbic acid and all the bioflavonoids, and there's some other really good ones out there. Molecular hydrogen is a great one
Mhm.
as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's one of my favorite aspects to this whole topic is the nutritional aspect and taking the right supplements. And because for years I just thought, oh, magnesium is the holy grail, because of the calcium voltage gated calcium channels, and magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker. But that's just one piece, and that's definitely not the only piece. As you mentioned, hydrogen, vitamin C, vitamin E, astaxanthin, even. And you could keep going, like even zinc and selenium. There's research looking at those with man-made EMF exposure with zinc and
Yep.
selenium. So I'm a big fan of oysters and just supplementing zinc in general. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we have tons of solutions, and yeah, I like that you're not just doom and gloom. It's like, you know, on a plane, especially. I mean, I always have a hydrogen tablet to drop in the little cup of water that they offer and just down it there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that traveling is like such a huge, can be a huge exposure, but it's to certain frequencies, which is something that's kind of important to talk about because, and this was one of the questions that you had said we should go over off air, was that talking about EMF clothing, and this is a perfect time to do that because the only time that I really recommend people wear EMF shielded clothing is when you're actually on the airplane. And that's because there's a controlled amount of frequencies. You're flying in this basically metal Faraday cage, and they'll have either Wi-Fi at 2.4 gigahertz or 5.8 gigahertz, and then radar, which is typically pulsing and at a much higher frequency. And 2.4 gigahertz and higher does not resonate very much with like clothing that's the size of a human body. But once you get out of that airplane and on the ground, there's thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of frequencies that are resonating with that shielded clothing, and that resonance causes a retransmission in a certain frequency range that's like right really close to your body. That's why a lot of electrosensitive people, like, they can't wear metal. They won't wear metal glasses, they won't wear metal jewelry or earrings or belt buckles. But yet we have all these companies coming out with metal clothing that they wear directly on their body, thinking that, okay, it's shielding you from this primary frequency and you can measure that. But measuring that resonant frequency is much more difficult. You have to be in a controlled environment to actually know what's going on with that. And so I have like some videos on my Instagram page where I talk about like the resonance that happens. And the only way to measure that is really like with tuning into the frequency of the resonance, which is usually in the FM radio range. And you can see that like when your body is exposed to an FM radio signal, it's actually rebroadcasting that signal out like 6 inches to a foot or more, depending on how strong that signal is, which means that it's also broadcasting it inside of your body. And if you have shielded clothing on that is much more conductive than the human skin, then it's going to resonate even more and in a stronger way, really close to your body.
And so you're saying the airplane is kind of like a controlled environment where it's not, because I think one thing you described to me in person is that each frequency basically has a certain distance that it covers on your body, like a physical distance. Like some might be like a penny, some might be like a football. And on the plane, you're saying there's a lot less variables to where you're not going to be creating as much. You're likely not creating as many resonant frequencies as you would on the ground.
Yeah, and also the way the signals are modulated for Wi-Fi and radar versus like FM radio and television frequencies, and like from basically like 80 megahertz. Like if you think about tuning your radio station in the FM range, it's like from about 80 to like 110 megahertz. You're actually tuning in the antenna and changing the length of the antenna in order to tune into the different frequencies. Well, each of those frequencies represents a length of the wave. So like the length of the wave is between like 4 and 8 feet, which is about the size of a human body. And in Dr. Robert O. Becker's book Cross Currents, he talks about how like the resonant frequency of the human body when you're laying supine, like laying down, is the same range as the FM radio range. And so your body's actually resonating a full resonant frequency with FM radio when you're laying down. But what's interesting is this phenomena that half the wavelength, quarter wavelength, eighth wavelength, all the way up to 1/32 of that wavelength actually resonates even stronger. That's why you don't have to have a huge 6-foot wavelength on your, or 6-foot antenna on your car to get the station. They actually tune it so that it's like half or a quarter of the wavelength of an antenna to pick up those frequencies. And then when you're tuning the dial, it's actually changing the length of the antenna to tune into that frequency. So basically on a plane, you have 2.4 gigahertz, which is a much smaller wavelength, and the way that they modulate it is in a pulse that's not continuous like a radio station wave. And so it's modulated differently. It doesn't resonate as much because of the way it's modulated, but also the fact that it's a higher frequency that's not going to resonate as much. And like millimeter waves are literally millimeter, like 10 millimeters or less. That's the size of the wavelength, and they don't penetrate as deeply as these other frequencies that have longer wavelengths. That's why they're concerned about millimeter waves effect on the skin, because it doesn't penetrate through the skin, through the subcutaneous fat and into the muscle or anything. It's just the skin that it would affect if it's affecting anything.
Wow. That was a great explanation. And the ascorbic acid helps with that in the skin, is my understanding, because it's found in the skin in good amounts. So when you're on a plane, what's your strategy? Do you have a jacket, a shirt, a hat that you put on that's infused with silver or metal, or what do you personally do?
I would, but I'm in the process of designing like my own take on what shielded clothing should be like.
Cool.
And so like what I normally have done is I don't like a lot of the shielded clothing out there. It's designed so that metal is in contact with your skin. So at the very least, what I would like, and I've worn it before, like the underwear and stuff, but I would wear a layer between the shielding clothing and my body, so there's a little bit of a buffer layer and it's not directly conducting onto the skin, because there is a little bit of that can happen. Like if you literally touch an antenna physically, you become part of that antenna. And so that's another aspect of this besides just the fact that it's resonating really close to the body. So when I'm on a plane, I take all the endogenous supplements. I have my molecular hydrogen, I have my vitamin E, I have my ascorbic acid, I have, and then before the flight, I'll be doing like the nitric oxide dump, getting my nitric oxide out of my cells. And then after the flight, I'll do the same thing. And then as soon as I get off the plane, I'm looking for a place to ground, like as soon as possible, either in wet grass away from electricity, or like once I get to my destination, I'm going straight to the beach if there's a beach.
What about the baggage claim conveyor? Is that ground? No, I'm just kidding.
It might be. Take your shoe off, put your bare foot right on there. It could be, yeah.
Get some looks, yeah. Well, that was great. Yeah, that makes me think that maybe the baseball caps are one of the safer, because it's kind of, you kind of have your hair as somewhat of a buffer, right?
Yeah, it depends on how much you value your brain. But there is actually there's a old book that I got actually off of Less EMF years ago that had this whole depiction about resonance. And I have posted like pictures of it on my Instagram and stories and posts recently. But they talk about how like with eyeglasses, you have like an antenna on either side of your ear, basically, and then it's going around like your eyes, and it creates this concentration of the field right in the middle of your brain because of the two resonating sides that go behind your ears of the metal, and so it's like this really old book written by some Russian scientist, and he just has all these like really simple diagrams about this resonant phenomenon. And I think his name is Hubert Traska. But it might even be like a book that's out of print, but you might still be able to find it for like $150 on Amazon or something, like.
Wow. That's why I never thought of that. Yeah. And then you can't win because contact lenses generally are blocking oxygen from reaching your eyeball, right? So
Yeah. So you have to find some like non-metallic glasses, basically, is the solution.
interesting. I wanted to ask you about grounding and earthing, and I've been using the grounding sheets since 2010, like pretty much since I got into human health. And I think the messages with a lot of people now, when I watch interviews, they say, "Oh, just turn off the breaker in the bedroom, for the grounding sheets on your bed, so that you're not having that electric field coming out from the wall and interacting with the silver." Do you think that's always an issue? Usually an issue? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it is always an issue if you live in a house that has electricity, which 99.999% of us do. Um, and turning off the breakers to the room, that'll fix maybe half of the problems that are there. Because, like when I first started assessing people's homes for EMF problems and electric fields, specifically in the bedroom, I would actually test and figure out how many breakers they'd have to turn off in order to get their body voltage down to like a good level. And usually my goal would be to get below like 30 millivolts or 50 millivolts would be the target. And on average, I'd have to turn off 4 or 5 different breakers. And sometimes it's breakers that you don't want to shut off, like the one to the fridge or some other room that you have. And a lot of people, you actually, in order to have a healthy bedroom environment, you need to have electricity on in the room so you can filter the air. It's not always practical to keep a window open because of the weather and the temperature and everything. So real quickly, I got to the point where I stopped recommending people to shut off breakers because the better solution is to actually shield and ground the walls to prevent the wireless from coming in, and also grounding it makes it so that all the walls are zero, just like the breakers are all shut off. And I could get all of the readings down to literally 0.000 instead of just, below 50 is good enough. And with the grounding mat, you are actually becoming a conduit for that electricity to come through your body to the ground. And it's one of the more complicated things to explain to people, but basically, if your body voltage is high and you touch a grounding mat, you'll see your body voltage go down. But that doesn't mean that electricity has just vanished, or like Clint Ober, I think, has said that it just bounces off your body magically when you touch the grounding mat. No, that's not what happens. What happens is literally you're grounding your body, and all of that electricity that was hitting your body before, now that you're grounded, is going through your body to the grounding mat and not registering on the meter anymore. And so it's splitting that voltage between the meter and the grounding mat. And so your body's becoming this conduit for this energy to flow out through the grounding mat instead of registering on the meter, because now your body is grounded and it's a lower voltage potential. So that electricity is now going through your body instead of registering on the meter, which is a higher voltage potential. And there still might be enough energy and electricity in the area for it to register something. Sometimes it goes all the way down to zero, but that doesn't mean that the electricity just disappears or bounces off your body. It just means that it's actually going through your body. Just like if you go to a playground and you go down a plastic slide and you touch somebody on the bottom of the slide before you touch the ground and they're grounded, that energy goes through their body to the ground in the same way that energy that's there in your room goes through your body through the grounding mat. So it's
A-
it's a very similar situation.
And does grounding to the third prong on the outlet versus rod to earth change how any of that works? Or
Yes. And here's what I recommend that people do, because it's there's this myth that grounding to the ground outside is better than grounding to the ground in the house. It's essentially the same thing, except that sometimes the ground of the house will have a little bit higher voltage potential than going straight to the ground outside because there's more voltage exposure. But here's the problem with grounding to a stake in the ground outside is that you're creating a separate voltage potential that you're bringing into the room. So if you have things plugged in that are grounded in the room, or your whole room is grounded and shielded, then now you've brought in this extra lower voltage. And if there's like a 100 millivolt to 200 millivolt difference between the one that you have plugged in outside versus the ground and the shielding that you have inside, then it's basically like you're being exposed to that 100 or 200 millivolts. And if your body's between those two voltages, then you've got a pulsating exposure. But if you have everything the same potential, even if it's 200 millivolts higher than out there, than outside, your body's gonna not even perceive it, because it's all the same potential and there's no electrical flow from one location to the other. So your body, and you're surrounded by everything that's much more conductive than your body as well, if you have like a fully shielded space. So the point isn't to get the lowest voltage potential. The point is to create an environment in which your body does not have that voltage potential flowing through it. Because that's when if your body's not perceiving that voltage potential, then it doesn't matter if it's lower outside or higher outside. The only instance where I'd say try it is if someone's really electrosensitive and they have like a lot of neighbors and there's a lot of dirty electricity that's running on the grounding system. Otherwise, but even then, sometimes it's still better just to have a contained space where you don't have that differing potentials in the room.
interesting. Wow. Yeah, I never heard it explained like that. I don't know how many people this will apply to, but just a quick question. Since we're fully off grid and we have the Victron two 10 kilowatt inverters, and I was fascinated to learn that they use like a toroid inside of each inverter, which I guess creates like a cleaner um, signal.
Mhm.
Um, have you heard of that? Do you think that affects how EMFs are, in my house by having everything run through those toroid inverters or
Well, I'd have
versus?
to test your specific setup, but I know that there are a lot of new solar installs that are addressing the dirty electricity issue that's been typical for solar panels for like 20, 30 years. And we have tested a lot of them that have the micro inverters. Just the term micro inverters doesn't mean that it's good, or that it's clean, but there are some types of micro inverters that do have that toroidal component in them, where we've tested and it's hardly producing any dirty electricity at all anymore. Um, but there's a specific way that, you can filter it. You can actually create a more robust grounding system for the entire house by using grounding plates instead of just the stakes in the ground. That way you get more surface area that's in the ground, and you have like a lower ground potential floor, which can actually mitigate that any issue you would have with doing a stake in the ground versus grounding to the house. If your house ground has like a grounding plate that's like a 2 foot by 3 foot plate that's attached with a 1/0 wire to your house, I mean, there's no way, even if you put a stake in the ground outside, that you're going to get lower voltage potential than that. That's going to be way better grounding to your own like third prong outlet than that. It's also going to be reducing the dirty electricity in the house in certain frequency ranges.
Wow. Have you ever seen people get worse readings doing rod to earth, like a grounding rod in the earth versus grounding an outlet?
Oh, all the time. Yeah,
Wow.
it's like one of the number one things that electro hypersensitive people do where they start to feel terrible, and it's because they've had somebody come in and usually they'll shield the room, or they'll have all these EMF products that are based on plugging into the ground of the outlet of the house, and that's what provides the shielding. And then they have like a grounding mat that they're plugging in to outside, and they're told that, oh yeah, put in the stake in the ground outside, that's going to be way better. And then the ground outside sometimes is higher than the voltage inside because the ground of the house is better, and sometimes it's the opposite, so you just don't know. And that's where I'd really love if people just understood that if you're going to do shielding and do EMF remediation, one of the most important things with electric fields is that you have one potential for the whole room. I mean, that's what our ancestors had when they were sleeping in caves, mud huts, and stone structures. Um, and at night, our ancestors go inside of those places, and a lot of times they're dampened or completely blocked from the Schumann resonance and other frequencies. And the sun goes down, so you don't have that energy and native EMF coming from the sun. So a lot of the stimulation, the energetic stimulation that our ancestors had was during the day. At night is the time when your body is supposed to kind of be cocooned into itself and tapping into its own frequencies and repair mechanisms and processes. Like all your cells are sending out electrical signals all night long, and from your different organs and your circadian clock of the organs. And in order to get a clear signal from all those organs, we need to not have interference from light, from stars, from even the Schumann resonance. And I think our ancestors often were even not electrically connected to the earth at night, because typically you'd create a dry area. You're not like on a wet stone or in the mud or anything. You're in a dry area with twigs and leaves and things like that, and you're insulated from the earth, but without any of this pulsating electricity around you. So in a way, your body is only tuning into its own innate frequencies, and everything else is dampened. And that to me makes a lot of intuitive sense. That your body needs a time to tune into itself and block out or have all these external energies and frequencies dampened, so that you can really do repair mode. Because sleep is when your body does all the repair that from all the inputs that you have inputting through the day, all the energetic inputs, whether it's food, whether it's light, whether it's other types of stimulation, mental stimulation, whatever. You're getting all this stimulation during the day, and at night you take all of those resources and you start to repair your body without any more inputs, hopefully. And I think that makes a whole lot of intuitive sense about how the body works.
Yeah, I think the predominant message is that we were grounded 24/7, right? Our ancestors
Yeah.
were.
Yeah, there's no AC electricity. Our ancestors were mainly walking around during the day, grounded all day
But not
long.
at night. I thought was interesting.
Yeah, but maybe not at night. Like if
I
you
guess we
actually had
don't know, right? Yeah.
yeah, you could take a multimeter, go out in the forest and create a nice dry area and measure it. And I bet you might get a little bit of grounding, but it's not nearly as much as you get when you do have a grounding mat on your bed, you know. And you can kind of simulate more of what you would be getting. There may even be like a dose dependent response on like what's the most beneficial amount of grounding to get. Like for me, when I use a grounding mat, I'll put a sheet over the grounding mat, because I feel like that simulates more like the insulation that you would be getting from the ground, and you still might get some of that earth energy coming up from the earth through the sheet, through an insulated sheet, or like in the case of being out in the forest, you've got some kind of padding or leaves or something that are dry, and you're still getting something from the earth, just not as much as if you were literally connected via a wire.
Interesting. Yeah, or sweat, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
connecting them through that. Let's see. Yeah, I was trying to see where we can where we can go from here. We talked a little bit about traveling, and I'm just curious, like some quick like hotel hacks that you do if you're going to a conference or something, what you do as far as lighting, EMFs, sleep, any things you recommend that people can generally do? Or
Yeah, I think in general, a good thing to do is I don't know if I have one here, but get an EMF meter and measure, um, especially the magnetic fields, whether it's a TF2 tri-field meter or there's one meter that we sell on the shielding shop called the Semprotech 33, and that's a nice one for someone who's just beginning to learn about EMF because you can turn it on and it measures three different types of EMF simultaneously. And the magnetic field one is measuring in triple axis, just like the TF2 does. It doesn't have a digital readout, but anything above the first green light is excessive. And so that's basically all you'd have to look for. And I actually use this meter, even though I have like all this professional equipment, like $20,000-$30,000 worth of equipment. I actually, that's the meter that I use because I can just bring it out really easily and measure real quick. But in general, some of the things that I do when I'm checking into a hotel is I ask for the first floor, and I need it to be away from the mechanical room or the Wi-Fi router. And first floor, why is that? It's because the higher up you get, the more exposed you are to all the towers, and the better view you have, the more view the towers have of your sleeping area. So if you're lower, then there's a lot more objects that can be blocking and dampening signals for you.
that's a good tip. Yeah. Recently I picked the corner room, which I figured instead of being in between all these, if each one has a Wi-Fi router, I don't know. I guess it depends on the hotel, right? Like sometimes each room will have its own router. It's kind of
Yeah,
rough.
yeah. That's terrible when that happens.
um, so yeah, what I generally do shower filter if it's easy enough to switch out, and just bring those little red LED strip lights USB to plug in,
Mhm.
and then
Oh yeah, yeah. Lighting's a whole other thing. So I usually will have like a little night light that I'll just plug into the bathroom. I've probably left like half a dozen of lights around the country, forgetting to take them out after I leave, and then I'll have like a Stetzer filter or green wave filters that I'll bring with me to plug in. Those, I think a good adjunct product would be to like just tape a little flag onto them so that you don't forget them,
right,
because I've left some of those behind as well. So like as a biohacker, it's almost like you want to have like a whole, this is something that we're going to actually create as a whole travel kit for people
cool.
eventually, where you can have like your EMF travel kit, and like you just pack it like perfectly when you leave, and then you know that you have everything in there.
Smart. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And do you measure the dirty electricity, or do you not even bother? You just plug a few in?
Sometimes I'll be curious and I'll measure it. Especially if I'm staying there for more than one night. And that's pretty easy to just plug in with your meter and measure if you have one of those Stetzerizers or green wave or line EMI meters. And sometimes there is an optimal location to plug them in. But a lot of times I'll have my Mercola tent with me, the little pop-up Mercola tent that you can ground. That I worked with his team on designing that, and then I don't even have to worry about dirty electricity because I'm already protected from the electric fields. So if I'm blocking the electric fields, I'm also blocking the dirty electricity that's riding on that 60 hertz electricity.
Hmm. Yeah, I got that. I don't think I ever, maybe once I've slept in it, but pretty innovative product. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a nice thing because you can travel with it and it blocks the wireless and the electric fields, and it's it attenuates at a very high level too. Sometimes the biggest complaint we have from people is that the airflow and it gets hot, but I usually will just crank up the AC in the hotel room or whatever, and it's better to sleep cool anyway. So and then if there is like a big issue, I'll just leave the tent unzipped a little bit so I can get some fresh air. And it's still like reducing the radio frequency signals by like 90%. So
Wow. Yeah, because I've heard, I don't know if it's a myth, that if there is a little pinhole crack the signals can get in and bounce around. Is there truth to that?
Um, the signals can get in, but I mean, when you actually take the readings, it's still like it doesn't really bounce around. It just goes in and then it loses energy. So it's not like you're in a microwave because the transmitter is way outside of the whole cage, you know. So it'd be like if there's a little bit of light that comes in, you know, you're still reducing the light. Like if the whole cage or the whole tent blocks light except for where the opening is, you know, it'd be like saying that it actually makes it worse by not blocking 90% of the light, but that's not the case. It actually makes the reading go way down. And you know, I think a lot of the things that people imagine in their heads and they explain to people over the years have become, you know, a mythical fact, if that's even a term. But like people repeat something enough that they start to say it as if it's a fact. And without even taking measurements. And I can never say something unless I've taken a measurement to back it up. So I really try to have a high amount of integrity with what I do and how I talk about things and thinking about things from that ancestral perspective, and also like actually testing and measuring things in order to back up like what we're talking about so that we can actually be effective in helping people and getting to the bottom of things with solutions that actually work.
That's awesome. Well, we have so many questions to get through. Do you want to start on these?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Yeah, these are some questions I had for you anyway, so we can kind of expand on a bunch of these. This is pertinent to me since I've been playing around with this system on kind of my bug out spot. If God forbid our main house burnt down or something happens, the Tesla. How bad are the Tesla Powerwall battery packs on the side of the house? Can you mitigate? So do you have experience looking at that system, the
Yeah, we
Powerwall?
do. There's several things that are going on with the Powerwall, and we have a customer in Arizona who's dealing with this issue right now. She won't turn it on because she's just scared of it. Um, but basically, like when you install it, you have to make sure that you install it in an area where you're not going to be living on the other side of it. So it should be in a storage area or a garage, as far away from like your living space as possible. And that's because when those batteries are activated, when the Powerwall is activated, and all of the components and wires and conduits and everything, it's going to have a really large magnetic field that goes like 6 to 8 feet out from where that is. And so there's not really any way to mitigate that unless you spend probably about half as much as what you spent on your Powerwall to shield that area. And that's not very practical to do that. So it's better to put it in an area where you don't have that issue. So that's one issue. The other issue is the dirty electricity that it creates. And there's specific filters that can be designed and customized to block some of the frequencies that are very pertinent and pervasive with that system. So you'd have to first install it in the correct location that's away from living areas, and then you need to get a customized filter for the Tesla Powerwall.
And the Stetzer and the Greenway filters, do you think those aren't specific enough for that system, or would those help?
They would help, but yeah, it wouldn't be specific enough. There's actually the guys from Live EMF Safe, the ones that make the cutoff switch. They have the ability to customize that filter.
Awesome. Let's see. This is kind of a general one. What should you do if you live in a condo? Sleep in an EMF blocking tent, grounded. Yeah, just general, I guess, super general recommendations for condo living.
Yeah, so depending on the condo, I mean, we've measured some condos where there are high rises in Chicago or New York City, and they actually wire the whole building in metal clad conduit so that you're already shielded from the electric fields in a lot of these condos. Now it's something you just basically, to test that, you need to get like a body voltage kit and unplug everything in the room and then see what your body voltage is. If it's below like 100 millivolts, then you've probably got electrical shielded conduit in there. And then the only thing that you're really worried about is like the wireless radiation. Maybe if there's wiring errors, you could also have a magnetic field, which would be more problematic, and you have to get an electrician to come in and fix that. But in condos, typically we will recommend people use canopies. If it's in a really high urban EMF area, we've started to recommend both shielding the walls and doing a canopy, or sometimes we'll have people double canopy the room or right around their bed. And then you need to think about airflow into the canopy as well.
Crank the AC.
Yep, exactly.
How do you mitigate or lessen the harmful effects of an electric meter outside of the bedroom?
So like an electric meter, like a smart meter.
That's what I'm guessing they're asking. Yeah.
So that has basically two to three different types of EMF that are problematic. It has the dirty electricity that it creates that goes on the whole system of the house. It has a magnetic field right on the other side of it. So like about 3 or 4 feet out from the meter, if you're, if you have a bedroom on the other side or a bed on the other side of the wall, you need to get out at least 4 feet from that. There is magnetic shielding material that you can use to shield that, but it's not just any metal plate. You have to actually get magnetic shielding material like Gyron, Giron, in like 2 to 3 layers of that, like spanning a foot or two out from where the actual meter is located. And that would have to be shielded. And that would probably be about, a 1/4 inch thick with 2 or 3 layers of it. If you want to be right up against that spot and you have no choice. The other thing is the wireless radiation. So like even that magnetic shielding material won't completely block the wireless pulse from a smart meter. You actually have to shield the whole room in order to completely block that pulse. And even then, sometimes it's difficult. You have to do the floor, the walls, and the ceiling to block that. Now you can also put like a cover over it that will dampen the signal. And it's not, a lot of people are concerned that it's going to reflect the signal back into the house. But what you're doing when you put the cover over is you're actually, there's already like 2 metal plates on the other side of that meter. And so you've already got shielding on that side. And what you're doing is you're completing that Faraday cage by using like the smart meter blocking wire mesh. Or if you really want to just do something right away, just wrap it in aluminum foil.
And on the head, can't forget that. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now we're to the hot topic. Are Teslas higher in EMFs than regular gas vehicles? I think you shot a video with Ben Lynch, right, on this.
Yeah, we did. So, and I also did one with Dr. Mercola and his Tesla talking about the screen and the flicker on the screen. So like you go to night mode and you have the brightness all the way up. Otherwise, it's like the screen is flickering like crazy and going to be like a huge neurological stressor while you're driving. Nobody wants to have a seizure while they're driving. So
interesting. I'd never heard that. Wow.
Yeah.
This is a huge topic because it's growing so quickly, and I haven't seen like comprehensive YouTube tests. I either see like it's like ultra extreme, they're super toxic, or the other side is like there's nothing wrong with them, like Elon Musk says, right? Like strap cell phones as you're around your underwear and it's safe or something. I think he said in an interview. It's like, where's the middle ground here? Let's like bring some science in, right? And
well, the only way you know is if you've tested it, and we've tested, myself and my team, we've tested them all over the country, probably at least once a month. We test a Tesla. And so we probably tested maybe 20 or 30 over the years. And my opinion on them, in the ones I've tested, maybe 3 or 4, is that for the driver, it's really not much different. And really the passenger in the front seat, it's really not much different exposure than what you get in a normal car. But as soon as you open up the back seat, like where the kids are going to be sitting typically, or other passengers, it is much higher as far as magnetic fields when you're back there, because you're sitting on the battery. And then also, like, if you are charging while you're in the car, it's going to be extremely, like, a lot higher, obviously, than sitting in your gas car running. And the magnetic fields from gas cars, it comes from the alternator and the motor, and then also a lot of times the tires that are spinning. So you'll have less magnetic fields towards the center in the back of a non-electric vehicle. Whereas, like, in an electric vehicle, a lot of the batteries are underneath the seats in the back, and you're going to have a lot higher magnetic field when it's using those batteries, because there's a lot of current that's flowing through those.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It seems to depend on all these different EVs too, like where the charging port's located. Because on the
Mm-hmm.
Tesla, I think it's like the driver's side and the back. And so
Right.
I think that video with Ben Lynch, you were saying you shouldn't sit in that corner when it's
Yeah.
charging.
Especially that corner seat. Like, if your child's falling asleep, or you have a child that's in the back seat and falling asleep, try to put their car seat on the other side of where the charger is, just in case you have to use a charger while they're sleeping. But if I was in charge of Tesla, I know there's a way that you can mitigate a lot of those fields if you use the proper shielding materials. Um, so, like, I actually like electric cars for this other reason, because I don't like breathing in fumes, and the gasoline and the diesel fumes. And, like, you can get like an organic acids test, and I had this done on my kids like probably 3 or 4 years ago, and we just gotten done with like an 8 month road trip during COVID, actually. And uh, and their organic acids test was through the roof with gasoline and all these other things. And we had this gas guzzling, like, year 2001 Yukon as like an 8 cylinder engine, and it's like this beast of a vehicle, but man, it pumps out a lot of fumes. And so we recently got like a Highlander hybrid, so that at least when we're in our driveway, we don't have to be breathing in those fumes. Or if we're stopped and we have the windows open, we're not, like, actually causing those fumes to come into our lungs and into our bodies and our bloodstreams. And so I think that's a huge stressor on the body as well. And you kind of have to compare these different things. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, electric cars, they either think they're like this like really eco-friendly option, but then there's all the people that talk about how they actually, like, ruin the environment more because of the mining process and all this stuff." Like, I don't care about, like, I mean, I care about the environment, but I don't care about a lot of that debate. My answer to people is, like, what's the healthiest for us, as far as, because normal cars probably do a lot of the same have a lot of the same problems with the manufacturing process. So there's not a perfect solution, but you have to consider, if you're talking purely about human health, there's a balance between gas versus electric, and breathing in fumes versus EMF exposure. And I kind of land a little more on the hybrid/electric car side as far as human health goes, for drivers, while still, like, saying that, hey, if a family car, it's going to be better to have, a gas vehicle for sure. And gas is actually getting to be more efficient, even the engines in gasoline. There's a lot of cars that are 30, 40, 50 miles a gallon, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's burning cleaner, so it's not as much fumes.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think we're still living in the Stone Ages and there's no perfect solution. And, people that have created a perfect solution got murdered,
Exactly.
unfortunately. So,
Yeah. Yeah. The
um,
the the car that runs on water, like,
yeah. I can't wait for you to measure. It should be out, I think, by the end of this year or next year. Aptera out of Carlsbad, they're making us the first solar EV that actually works. And I think think I've heard you talk about how solar panels, especially if you're close to them and they're gathering photons and generating a current, you probably don't want to be close to those panels. And that's actually like the whole hood, roof, and hatch of the car is going to be panels. So I'm really curious what the EMFs on that will be versus a regular EV.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because really the it depends on the design of the actual physical product. If it's just using pure DC and it's not doesn't have any inverter involved, like and it's just going right to the battery, then it may be just fine. But there are effects of DC current when it's in high amounts too that we can't ignore as well. And we don't even measure for that because the AC is just so pervasive and damaging that we don't even go down that rabbit hole.
Mhm. Interesting. Have you done EMF comparisons in like gas or diesel new vehicles versus flying in a plane? And are they similar or way different? Or
Planes are usually lower in like magnetic fields and
okay.
typically most of the things that you test for. So traveling in a car, I mean, you go on a road trip and you're able to get out of the car and ground yourself, be exposed to sunlight versus like in an airplane, you're just completely isolated. And a lot of times you can't even move. Like you don't get a break unless you're just walking to the restroom or something. So there's a you just have to be develop these healthy travel habits when you're traveling in a car or in a plane. Get up, walk around, take a break, and get sunlight. Open the window if you can, even though there's a lot that's filtered out when you're in a plane. You're up higher, so there's actually less atmosphere that's filtering out the sun as well. So you're probably getting more than what you realize. And I should actually measure that sometime. That'd be interesting to see.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah. Um, let's see. EMF clothing, already talked about that. Yeah, a lot of questions on EMF clothing, like for babies and kids or blankets for pregnancy. Usually not recommend those.
Well, the only time I recommend like a belly band or a blanket is if someone's knowledgeable about how to use it. Because sometimes they'll use it like a typical new parent will like place the baby blanket down on the ground and then put the baby on top of it. And what kind of EMF are you blocking for the baby there? Like what's coming up from the ground that you're trying to block? Nothing. Everything's going to be coming from above and actually reflecting that energy back to your baby. So the only time you would really that's not one of the uses that I would recommend people do. Don't use it as a blanket to lay down on the ground and then put your baby on top of it. Wrap your baby in it. And then as far as the belly bands go, like when you're pregnant, um, those can be good. I think it provides a pretty like full shield for the most part, especially for moms who are using their phones a lot and they typically have them right in front of their belly. Sometimes
Hmm.
you'll see a mom that's pregnant and they'll just have the phone and they'll use their belly as kind of a little shelf to look at their phone. And I'm always thinking like, gosh, that baby's just constantly being exposed to this energy. In those cases, especially, it would be really beneficial for the belly band. But it's not necessarily going to be something that's 100% because if you're also exposed to frequencies that are resonating, then it's going into the belly. But if you have a habit of using your phone very close, I think it's a good thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I get a lot of questions, as a supplement owner of, is your supplement safe for breastfeeding? And that's, legally, I usually can't answer it, or I say, if I was a breastfeeding woman, this is what I would do. But a
I was
lot
a
of
trans
exactly. Yeah, a lot of these substances like ascorbic acid transmitted through breast milk. And so that's yeah, a lot of the time what the mom supplements, if she's breastfeeding the baby, she is supporting the baby as well and all the EMF protecting effects of those substances. So
Yep, exactly. Yeah, great recommendation.
um This is a good one. Does he recommend EMF blocking paints for interior walls? I'm going to guess that people should know what they're doing with this, right? Instead of just starting to paint their living room with Y shield and
Yeah, you have to know what you're doing. And we have a very specific way that we recommend to do the painting to where we can get like a buffer layer and so that the paint actually absorbs more. Like if there is a leak, it absorbs more into the shielding of the walls in this double layer buffer system that we use. And the other thing is, like, there's a lot of so-called experts out there that will take measurements with a meter that points to where is able to determine the location where the radiation is coming in from. And when they use that meter and they use shielding material on one side, it seems like it reduces the signal coming from that direction. And it will reduce the signal coming from that direction. But what it also does is all the frequencies that are coming from around will bounce off that one wall and concentrate in that area. So we never recommend to shield just one wall or to not shield the ceiling. Like probably 60 to 70% of the EMF is going to be coming through the ceiling and the top half of the walls. So at the very least, you have to shield the walls and the ceiling. And now we even recommend to shield the floors. We've kind of come to this point in human history where we have to do, if you're serious about your health and you're going to be living in your current location for more than 2 years, you really should just go ahead and bite the bullet and shield your space. Because here's the thing about shielding your environment. Sleep is like the number one time when your body is repairing. And it's also 100% compliance after you're done shielding. You don't have to carve time out of your day to go and get your shielded sleeping therapy. You do it every single night, 100% compliance no matter what. So for kids, it's like the best therapy you can ever give them versus like, hey, if I want to take advantage of my sauna or my float tank or any other modality that you have, you literally have to carve time out of your day in order to get that benefit. But every single night, you're getting this constant healing therapy that debatably the most important repair time of all. And if you're blocking out that stressor, then everything that you're doing during the day is going to work better because you're able to repair at night.
That's awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. It's do you advise using hardwired internet, like just straight Ethernet connection?
Yes, definitely. And you have to, it's best if you can also ground that Ethernet cable and use a Cat 7 or Cat 8 cable. And then you have to get a shielded and grounded Ethernet router or port or switch. And there's a certain way you have to set that up. We're working on putting together like a kit where people can actually just have that. And I think that there are some kits out there that kind of look, one of the goals with my new company I'm trying to do is to make things that are aesthetically pleasing that are also shielded. And whether it's like, I think you have one of these.
I still haven't installed it. I have to put that in. Yeah, because we have a little charging station in the kitchen, like a lot of people. I have all my little devices that I always try and stuff and keep charged, USB-C and whatever.
Right.
And that's so convenient instead of having to have this crazy hub with all these things coming off. And
yeah. So this product I'm holding up is just a regular outlet that you'd have an electrician install, and it has 2 USB ports and then a USB-C port in it. And you'll see these kind of products at Home Depot, but they won't be grounded. The casing on the inside is actually not grounded. So we were able to work with the manufacturer to ground it. And it's ETL listed, which is NEC approved. So if your electrician asks, it's ETL listed, Intertech. They should be familiar with that. It's an NEC approved product. And you plug it in, and there's basically no electric fields coming out of the things that you're either charging things with, Or you might even have like a little strip light like this that has a USB on the end. You can plug that in and there's not going to be any AC electricity coming out of it. So it's a great product. We recommend it for people to put it either as charging stations or like right next to their bed. You can literally plug your phone in, keep it on airplane mode, use your phone as an alarm clock and not worry about there being any EMF or having to charge your power bank and like all this other stuff. You can actually just literally plug it into this grounded port and you're good.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's one of my favorite products that you have. And living here in Idaho, I learned you kind of have to become somewhat your own plumber and electrician. So I'm working on learning how to switch out outlets. I don't think it's rocket science. I think you just have to watch out you don't get bit, right? But
Yeah,
by the
just
hot
make sure
wire.
you turn the breaker off and watch a YouTube video that has lots of disclaimers.
Right. Yeah, I watched a YouTube video of how to fill your own propane tanks from your big tank. And the guy was saying throughout the video is like, this is my first time doing this. And the comments were just hilarious. Like Darwin Award, you know.
First and last time, right?
Right. Um, that's great. Thoughts on Starlink?
Good question. So I think there's been a lot of hype around 5G in general and Starlink as well. My feeling on Starlink in particular is that it's actually a lot less EMF than what we currently have because of the 3G, 4G, and 5G networks. Like if we could start over and get rid of all that crap and just have Starlink, I think it would be healthier for everybody, like the planet, the trees, everything. Because it's a low amount of radiation coming from a long distance away. You have to have a satellite that collects that frequency and concentrates it. And it's pretty high speed. I mean, I think they're getting like up to 100 megabytes per second, right?
I'm on
Like,
it right now. Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, if we could start over, I think it would be great for this planet. But the fact that it's blanketing the whole planet in this low grade, higher frequency, like 14 to 17 gigahertz, I think. And it's just caking on to all the other EMF soup that we're in. It makes it so it's like bittersweet. But as far as like the homes I've tested where I go out there and I test and they need Starlink, they have very little EMF exposure as far as wireless radiation goes. There's a place up in Priest Lake that I tested and it's like this off-grid kingdom and he has Starlink and there's like I'm barely detecting anything on any of my EMF meters like equipment, but he's got this high-speed internet out there through Starlink. So the main thing with Starlink is to make sure that after you get the signal, you have a wired router and wired system, and you don't just use the wireless router that they give you. And after that, I mean, you're like once you get the signal, you're kind of in charge of how that data is dispersed throughout your property.
I've heard some local people getting sick, or they said they believe their serious condition came from is it the repeater station, like those kind of ball looking things that Starlink sets up? Is that what it's called, a repeater station? That's
Yeah, they have these, they call them satellites, but I actually went over there and measured those things locally, the ones you're talking about. And I also looked up what frequencies they were transmitting and what direction they're transmitting. And they're basically just shooting straight up. So I think that a lot of the worries that people have are physically represented when they have those things that are installed and they just don't know. And so they start to feel things in their head. And maybe there is something else that they've installed somewhere that's emitting something, but it's not those particular satellites that are, because those are going straight up and I was not detecting anything around them whatsoever. And I have like a millimeter wave meter that I use to test things like that now that's in the same frequency range that they would be using. So a lot of the hype around Starlink, 5G, like everything is overblown. But I would say also that we don't know what we don't know. And a lot of the frequencies that they're using, there's like blind spots in like the EMF meter, like arsenal that we have. We have to actually get like really expensive equipment to measure a lot of this stuff. And now those gaps are becoming less and less because there are affordable millimeter wave meters that you can use from the FM5, which is the one we sell on our website, and then also Safe and Sound. They have a new millimeter wave meter that's good. So I like to have multiple types so that you can kind of compare and test them against each other. That's the best way to do any kind of EMF measuring, is to use multiple meters that help to test against the other equipment that you have. But even the normal 5G frequencies, I think it's better technology. Like the millimeter wave technology is better technology than 4G and 3G and the low band and mid band 5G frequencies, because a lot of it is on demand. You're not even exposed to it unless you're using it. And then even when you're using it, it's like beamed right at your phone with like a 6-foot distance. And I've tested this in Spokane and Seattle and other places. And, for how much 5G has been talked about the last 5 years, it's like maybe 0.1 or 2% of our EMF exposure, like the millimeter waves actually. And it's like the only thing that people talk about. It's like 95% of the stuff that has been talked about is about millimeter waves and how it's like this new technology and everything. But when you actually go out there and measure it, I mean, maybe 1 in 100 times I detect something.
Wow. And now there's, is it 6G, right, that they're starting to roll out?
Yeah, and who knows what they're going to be doing with that. But allegedly, they're going up to 60 gigahertz, which is like resonates with the water or the oxygen molecule in the body. And so there's a lot of conspiracy theories around that. There's a lot of legitimate concerns as well. And, I don't think they're ever rolling out technology with health in mind. So I'm always highly skeptical, but I also am skeptical of those that make a bunch of claims about something without showing with actual testing.
Right. Wow, resonates with the oxygen molecule. I wonder if my hyperbaric would make things worse then. Well, I want less oxygen. I don't know.
Probably would help you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's exploding oxygen, I don't know how that's going to work. You said that was 60 gigahertz?
Gigahertz, yeah.
Wow, interesting. Are laptop EMF shields effective, or do the EMFs just go around them?
The wireless goes around them, but those shields are really meant for the magnetic fields that's coming off of the keyboard going down onto your lap. So it's effective for the magnetic fields. There's one by Harapad that actually wraps around the keyboard, and that's kind of nice because you can still like get the magnetic field protection on the top as well as the bottom.
Oh, okay, cool. Let's see. We had a bunch of questions about building a house and how to basically set it up for success. It sounds like you really have to have people like you guys come out and kind of do a consultation, right, on that?
Yeah, there's so much that goes into building a house. Like I'm probably working on like 50 or 60 builds right now with builders and architects like all around the world. And there's different materials that you'd use for different substrates, different flooring, different types of walls. And in order to plan out like the location of the electrical system, you have to really work with the electrician and get them on board, because they'll start just going through their normal routine and not thinking about this. So we kind of, my company, we act as the filter for them, like actually make sure that when you install this, you do it here, or we need to put some shielding in this location to block the magnetic field if that's where you want to have it, or we need to move this to another location. And then also one of the big things to decide upon, like when you're building a house, is how much shielding do you want? Do you want your whole house to be a Faraday cage? Or do you want to have some connectivity in your house so you can actually use your cell phone in a healthier way? And also, what direction is the cell tower that you're connecting to? And that's something that we actually test with cell phone boosting devices. Like the cell phone boosting companies use it to detect dead spots. We use it to detect where the best signal is, and then we can tell you which direction, the signal for your cell phone's coming in. Because if you have poor reception in your house, you're going to have more exposure from your own phone.
Right.
But if you design the house in a way where, hey, we have good reception on this side, we don't want to put shielding on that side, but we want to shield the bedrooms from those signals, then you just have a better chance of, creating an environment where you have good connectivity, but also balancing like we want to be protected, especially when we're sleeping and in our relaxation areas.
Yeah, I think uh, you showed me, I think it's a few years ago now, in your living room, you made it so that you have better reception than in most other places in your home, right?
Yeah, and that's mainly because we have a lot of people that when they come over, they're on their phones, and I didn't want to have a situation where it's less about the frequencies bouncing around inside and more so about their reception on their phone being good. So you want their reception to be good so their phone's not pumping out more like intense frequencies.
Makes sense. Or you just grab it and put it in airplane mode for them, right?
Yeah, I just throw it in a tin can. Yeah. That's what I do when my daughter's friends come over for sleepovers. I'm like, put everything in this tin can, and then they can't be on their phones with the blue light, like staying up. Because that's what they'll do is the teenage girls, they'll have their phones and they'll sit there and be flipping through Instagram or whatever, watching Mac Blackburn videos and stuff. Like, and it's
Way
just
different from our
blasting.
childhood.
What's that?
Way different from our childhood. I mean, I had sleepovers, but we'd watch like, I don't know, movies, and it wouldn't be in our face.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's the frequency plus the light that keeps them up. And I've noticed since I started implementing that rule of everybody's phone goes into the Faraday cage when they come over, they go to bed like 2 hours earlier. Of course, it makes sense, right? They're not getting the blue light, they're not getting the EMF. They're actually having a real sleepover where they're talking about real things in real life and not just flipping through the technology that's so addictive.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost feel like that's, from my perspective, is the more like harmful aspect of smartphone than the EMFs. It's just the addictive quality of scrolling. Because I mean, I just looked at my screen time the other day, not to brag, but it was like under 3 hours. I'm like, wow, I've come a long way from just answering everybody's questions for years, or trying to.
Right.
And so yeah, look at your little, I think it's in the settings on the iPhone. You can see how much you spend on your phone each day. And it's a good, measure of your health, I think. So,
Yeah. Great.
uh, should I worry about EMFs from my red light device and PEMF mat?
If you're using them a lot, I would say yes. On a daily basis, I like to use my red light every day. And lately I've been using my Spurdy lamp every day, my Fiji. And because we live in northern Idaho and we, are not getting any vitamin D right now. And I just had my levels tested. And I think in the summer I was at like 88 at the end of the summer. And now like 2 months ago I got it and it was all the way down to 40. So just like uh the EMF on the Spurdy is um pretty easy to mitigate because all you need to do is replace it with a shielded power cord and the rest of the whole thing is grounded. On a lot of red light devices, it's the same, but they also have magnetic fields that come out like a certain distance. So I would recommend at least, I know the closer you get, the better, the more intensity you get, and the sometimes it's even more therapeutic. but typically at least 8 inches away is a good guideline for most panels. There are a few where you can get right up on it and it doesn't do anything, especially if it's battery operated. I think Gembared is one of those companies, and then any of the battery operated belts like from Mito Red Light and the portable devices that are battery operated are usually not a problem.
Awesome. Yeah, I had Bryant Myers on the show, and he's a really controversial figure because he'll just slam these companies in these really in-depth review videos and showing how the cheaper, I mean, they're marketed PEMF mats are just using the 60 hertz wave, like, and just basically pulsing that through the mat. And
Oh, gosh, terrible.
it's not altering it or anything. So
Yeah, there's a lot of scams out there. And there's also a lot of things where it's just like stupid. They should totally just design the product to just have the therapeutic pulsations and block out the things that are not therapeutic. And it's so, from my perspective, it'd be so easy to do that. And I consult with companies on doing that. We've consulted with Sauna Space to shield their saunas, and some other sauna companies, like I think Radiant Health saunas. Theirs are pretty low, and I've consulted with Randy and his team, and then like Morosco Forge, like I tested their ice bath and completely grounded. Like you get awesome grounding therapy even from doing their ice bath just for a few minutes a day, even better than you get from being in the ocean. Because you have this fully grounded conductive tank that you're in, and you just are, it's like a blast of this DC energy that you get. Now, that's not necessarily natural, but I mean, you feel great when you get out of it. But is it because of the cold? Is it because of the grounding? Is it because of a combination of both? Who knows? But I feel like it's a great dose of negative ions that you get from that like experience. So,
or you just live in North Idaho, right?
yeah, or you just roll around in the snow or the slush in this case. Completely.
Well, I know if when I was living in a warm, like San Diego down there, ice baths in the summer or any time of year feels amazing because it could be super warm all the time. But
Yeah,
up here, I feel like just going outside, that's my cold exposure.
yeah, you get enough.
I don't know if we talked about this earlier. I don't think this specifically is sleeping near non-occupied outlets bad. Is it worse when something like a nightstand light is plugged into them?
Yeah, it's way worse when something's plugged in because you're bringing that electricity out from behind the wall. But it's only worse in the fact that you're creating the exposure is coming out like just a few inches closer to you. There's actually like if the outlet doesn't have anything plugged into it, it's just the same as if there's something plugged in like a few inches behind, because the Romex wire is really, the electrical wire behind the wall is really the same as having something plugged in. It's just a little further away from you because it's not in the room. So the outlets themselves, like a lot of people will be like, what do I do? Can I block the outlet like with something? It doesn't matter. Like if you're close to the wall, it's just the same as being close to the outlet. So the outlet doesn't really matter unless you have something plugged in, and then you're actually bringing that electric field into the room and closer to your body, especially if it's just a two-prong ungrounded cable. And then the upgrade from that would be to have the three-prong cable, and then the three-prong grounded and shielded cable is the very best. And that would, like, you can plug that in and it has no difference whatsoever. In some cases, it actually lowers the reading in the room because you're adding more grounding material that's draining some of the electric field voltage coming into the room.
So it's switching out, say the outlets, say that you're the head of your bed with your safe charge that you showed from the shielding shop. Would that just change it by a few inches? Or
Well, what that does is like when you plug in the USB, it'll ground that whole USB cable and still allow the DC energy to go through. So there won't be any AC that's coming onto that. Because in the normal outlet that just has the USB port, that the metal in there is floating, and it's floating right next to all this AC energy. And so it conducts onto the charging cable that you have. And so like when it's grounded, which it should be, and it is in our products, we have it grounded in our safe charge outlet and also our new desktop power dock. We have the same amount, two USBs and one USB-C. And then that has a whole shielded cable on it, so you can clamp it onto your desk and have a charging port right on your standing desk. And cool. So that's a new product. Probably, you might not have seen it because I think I put it up like a couple of weeks ago. But basically, my whole desk has shielded power strip, surge protector. I've got my shielded power dock up here with the grounded USB. I've got my Jovial lamp right here, which is a halogen, 150 watt halogen lamp that's got a dominant wavelength of 588 nanometers, and the whole lamp is shielded. I just got a shipment of those in, like 100 here up in Sandpoint, so I'll give you one of those too.
Oh, cool. Are you using those just for ambient lighting or also for like photobiomodulation, like your shirt off or something?
Yeah, you can take your shirt off and use it. I'm kind of coining the term gold light therapy for this product because it's got that dominant wavelength of 588 nanometers, and that has been studied extensively in the literature for mental focus and also skin health. And it's the dominant wavelength of what the sun is when it's like in the middle of the day. And it's about 2100 Kelvin light. So it's not going to disrupt your melatonin, even if as you get later into the day, it still provides you with that mental focus. Plus it has the red and the near infrared wavelengths in it. Actually, I can kind of show you what the color spectrum.
You say that's 150 watt roughly, or 100 to 150?
It's 150 watt halogen bulb.
I think I can afford that off grid. I keep getting more solar panels.
Yeah, this one I didn't want to make it red because the sun isn't red, and so like before in the past I've recommended the photon light like all day, but I think that's a way better product to have at night as more like a firelight or early in the morning. But this product I designed so that it's got like a higher yellow content with the halogen bulb, and then the dominant wavelength is in that range where you're getting like that good mental focus. And I've noticed a huge difference just using this light versus the red light that I was using before, because neurologically and for your brain, it just makes a lot more sense to have something that's simulating what the sun's color is.
Absolutely. Were you just pointing one of the Hopo color meters on it, or?
Yeah, but then I realized that I had two bulb designs, and the one that I have in here is incandescent. It's not the halogen bulb. So
okay.
It's not going to be the right spectrum. Otherwise, I would show you.
Well, Brian introduced me to that, the meter that I just referenced. Like Hopo Color is the brand, and it's a pretty cool device. I think now I have two because I wanted a more broad version that goes to higher wavelengths, I think beyond 1,000 or something. But even on an overcast day like this, I'm still surprised when I take a measurement outside. Yeah, you could still see the whole rainbow on the meter. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that meter is what's helped me to kind of guide my product development as far as lighting goes and my recommendations for optimal lighting in people's homes. And the reason why, really, if you're looking at like what we're getting outside, it needs to be a full spectrum of the blue and the red and the near infrared. Because even on a cold day, you're still getting tons of near infrared from outside, like although even beyond 1,000 nanometers. And it's just like insane that like our ancestors were getting this all the time. And then you go indoors and you see like how little you're getting if you don't have halogen or incandescent bulbs inside. And so that's why, like, even off grid, a product like this that's like targeting your space, but rather than just putting the halogen and incandescence everywhere, that could be very, inefficient as far as energy consumption goes. But having this like directly pointed at you, like while you're working. It's like a more efficient way to give your body the energy that it needs.
Yeah, it's really cool. Have you heard like we were talking about earlier, all these ideas that get thrown out without, measuring or facts, but this one, I don't know how you would measure it. I've heard the idea that at night when you're lighting your space, you want the light to be more at eye level instead of above you, because I
Hmm.
guess the direction of the light shining kind of informs your body what time of day it is. Have you heard that concept?
Yeah, I think I've heard that from Dr. Alexander Wunsch, who like
Mm.
I highly respect. He's the guy that's probably one of the foremost photobiologists in the world, and he informs all the topics about health and light and everything. And he's the one that brought to the forefront the whole idea that ATP, you get 2/3 of your ATP from light and only 1/3 from food. I think he's the one that talked about that in his research and studies. But as far as like the like where the light's coming from above or below, that is another nice thing to have with this lamp because you can have it lower and you can put it up
Cool.
higher and uh, and do that with this actual desk lamp. And so I think there is something to that. Um, it just kind of starts to get into the weeds a little bit for me because it's like, how much of a biohacker do you want to biohack? Like oh, it's 5 minutes later. I have to push
Right,
this down a little bit. Like,
right. It can get pretty crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
Let's do a few more here. Would using rebar or metal, I don't know what this word, lath, in the structure of roof and walls trap or amplify EMFs?
It would actually help block out a lot of frequencies. Some of a lot of the homes in California and Texas use that wire mesh in like stucco. And there was one in particular, I think outside of Austin that I tested, and there was a cell phone tower probably like 200 or 300 yards away. Just this huge tower, and you go inside the building, and it was the readings were reduced by like probably 90% just from having that metal lathe like in the stucco
Wow.
and blocking everything. And the windows and everything in that particular house were very high energy efficiency. And so they have like a low E glass silver, like double or triple coated silver coating on the glass. That actually blocks out wireless radiation as well, especially if it's got the metal cladding on the outside.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So you don't know until you measure, like don't start ripping off the walls, right? And stuff. Just you might be good.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that the metal mesh too is that it's typically grounded, and so because all the outside walls are actually grounded with it usually, and it makes the electric fields on the outside walls, even though there's like electrical wires going through, like typical Romex, sometimes it'll make it so that the fields don't come out into the house as much because they just go right to that ground. It kind of acts as like a black hole for
Wow.
the electricity to go to the lowest voltage potential.
Wow. Yeah, in our shop, we have a big metal roof, and I can't really send a text or refresh Instagram or anything in there. My phone doesn't work that well. Just kind of interesting. So if we
Yeah.
get hit by an EMP, my car in there, hopefully it helps.
Yeah, exactly.
um, let's see. Activity tracker recommendations. I think they're referring to like Apple Watch, Fitbit, Aura Ring.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh, I've typically used the Oura Ring because it has an airplane mode. As far as activity and sleep, I think it's pretty good and it's been getting better. I lost my charger recently, so I haven't used it in like a couple months, but uh, I think there's a lot of people that are using the Whoop strap too. And they say that has some good metrics that complement the Oura Ring. But I would definitely recommend Oura Ring for sleep since it has an airplane mode, um, and it uses red, infrared, and also I guess it now uses a green light to do like O2 sensing as well.
Hmm. Yeah, the Apple Watch, I have that, and it has an airplane mode, but it also has the GPS that you can turn on or off. And I haven't measured it, but I would imagine the levels go through the roof when the GPS is on and you're
Yeah,
using that.
we'll have to measure that when we get together in person. It'd be a fun thing to do because I don't have an Apple Watch. I haven't like measured them too much. There's just been a few times like when I've been on an assessment and there's like one frequency left and it's been the Apple Watch, like they're like, I had it on airplane mode but apparently the Bluetooth was on or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, I think we covered most of the questions, and if not, I think we talked about it. Um, yeah, this was long overdue. We'll have to have, like I was telling you, a follow up. Maybe we could do a video together for my academy or something to
Yeah.
measure stuff. And I think you have an awesome shop, the shieldingshop.com, if anyone wants to check it out. And you could check out the products that he referred to, the SEM Protect, the Safe Charge, the desk lamp, and you have a bunch of stuff on there, even like a whole house dirty electricity filter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're adding more products. I've probably got 30 products in queue and I kind of got tired of there not being any options for people, especially my customers, like that we do assessments with shielded healing and we travel all around and do that. And like, there's like things that they're like, well, what do I do instead? It's like, well, there's not really a product that exists yet like this, but there needs to be. And so I just decided that it's time and like, this is my jam. I'm really good at the product development. I know what needs to be done for people to have a EMF shielded environment and what they need to do. And I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable about light because I've self-taught myself and learned from a lot of world experts in lighting, much like yourself. And you and I we're out there trying to delineate things for people in this world of confusion and trying to find the truth. And that's one of the things I appreciate about you and your show and your supplements is over the years, when you discover something, you change your mind about it and you say, okay, this is a better product now. And that's what you have to do if you're honest. If you're an honest person learning and you're open to changing your mind, your products are going to change. It's just as simple as that. Like next year, we might come out with a new shielding fabric that's way better than what we offered. And a lot of my customers might be upset. But if I discover something better, I have to do better, and I think you're the same way. So I highly respect that about you, Matt. And I know that your audience does too.
Well, I appreciate that, Brian. Yeah, I look at you with the same regard and appreciate all that you've done. And yeah, if anyone wants to check it out, the other website is shieldedhealing.com, and you click EMF testing. And then depending on your region, you could click on it. And if you're here in Idaho, you'll most likely have Brian coming out, right?
Yep. Yep, that's right.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for everything that you do, Brian. I think you're a leader in the space and breaking apart a lot of the nonsense and myths out there about EMFs. So thanks for coming on and chatting about it. I had a lot of fun.
All right. Awesome, Matt. Talk soon, buddy.
Yeah, stick around as we close out the show.
All right.
I really like when my podcast guests make me question what I think I know. And Brian Hoyer is definitely in that category. I think he has the best information out there on EMF shielding and all the little details that go into it. I'm definitely going to have him out to the house and have him test the off-grid cabin and probably post that footage to the YouTube Mitolife Academy. I'm really curious what he'll say about the EMF shielded flotation room that I created, but even more so the lodestone bathtub with that natural pulsed magnetism and that's grounded. Curious what he'll think about that with his readings. I liked what he said about grounding technology, because when I hear about it, I often just hear one or the other, that you're discharging body voltage or that you're getting negatively charged electrons from the Earth, but it's actually both. And I thought it was interesting that he sees the drop in body voltage, as he said, rerouting voltage to a location that's away from the body, seeing that as not the main benefit. I thought that was fascinating. And he thought it was more important getting that DC energy from the Earth. And I liked that he brought up nutritional therapy for EMF mitigation, because that's something that is very rarely talked about. I often see educators just go straight to technology and EMF shielding and not even touch the topic of nutrition and specifically nutritional supplements, when there's so many readily available solutions out there to protect your cells from EMR. As he mentioned, vitamin C, vitamin E, there's molecular hydrogen, there's magnesium, even selenium, zinc, melatonin. There's a huge list of supplements, and I make sure to take all of those if I'm traveling and I'm staying in a hotel, especially at a high-rise building, and I feel such a protective effect doing that. In the past, when I didn't know about these supplements, I would wake up feeling groggy and out of it. And now that I have this stack down, I mentioned all those supplements, I feel so much better the next day. And I think about all of the people living in that environment for several years, if they're living in a condo or an apartment complex where they're just getting blasted because you're at the mercy of what everyone around you next door is doing as far as Wi-Fi routers and boosters. And I'm sure most people just have it on 24/7. So I think in those situations, it's really important that people don't rely on just diet or food alone to get those nutrients up, because the burn rate is just so insanely high from the constant exposures sleeping in that field. So if you want to explore more of Brian's work, you can head over to shieldedhealing.com. You can click on EMF testing and have him come out to your home and upgrade your environment. He has a store on the website that he's constantly adding new products to. And then I also recommend searching his name on YouTube, because there's some home consultation footage that he did where you can get an idea of what he offers. And his other website, as he mentioned, is the shieldingshop.com. And there's a lot of similar products that are on his other website, and then there's some new ones as well. My website is matt-blackburn.com. I have my CLF protocol up there. It stands for calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. That's a protocol that I created about 3 years ago that I've been refining over the years and adding to. And then under the shop tab, you can see all of my recommended products that I've used or currently use. And the other website is Mitolife. You can find that at mitolife.co. We have a lot of different products available. We have grounding technology, which is probably one of the more nuanced products that we carry. So I would experiment with it, and depending on the situation, it can benefit your sleep and overall health. And then under that same living tab, we offer super clean shampoo and conditioner, and combined with a good shower filter. I think those are really excellent products. You can read the reviews under each page, and people have been really enjoying it. And speaking of shower filter, little sneak preview, we currently sell a under-counter 7-stage water filtration unit. We think it's the best in the industry because it was built from scratch. It's not private labeled. It's unlike anything on the market, but we're currently working on a shower filter. I've been using the same one and recommending it for years, but we think we could improve on the design So look forward to that probably by this summer, if not sooner. And then under the wellness tab, you can find all of the supplements. I take them all. And currently there's a surplus sale going on several products. Encephalon, Jellyfish Jolt, Elk Velvet Antler, the probiotic, the Dairy Absorb, vitamin C, and Digestinol. So if you enjoy any of those products, I recommend you stock up, because now's a great time. I have a YouTube channel. You can find that at Mitolife Official. That's where you can find a lot of the older shows that aren't available anymore on the podcast app or Stitcher or Spotify. And that's also where I have the Mitolife Academy. So it's $15 a month, and you gain access to 2 private videos every month that I make on my current research, experiments, and then the last day of every month, there's a live Q&A where you can ask me anything. So that is all for today. I'll see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.